Alright guys, so I think this is the best watch I've checked out from Watchdives on the channel so far. So it's the Watchdives WD007 Titanium. So hopefully by the end of this video you'll understand why I'm saying that, but let's get right down into it now. So I'll quickly move the watch out of the way for a second, briefly show the packaging in passing. So we've got the logo on the front there, and then it's a carbon fibre effect case, got the logo on the zip too, so always useful, not a useless box. And now here's the watch. So there's a few different variations with this one. So I've got the white dial version obviously, with the date at the 6 o'clock, but they also do it without a date, and they also do a black dial version with the vintage style indices, a no time to die style homage. You can also get it on a nylon strap as well if you don't want to get it on this mesh one, but personally I'd be going for the mesh one, which I'll explain why in a little bit. And as always, links will be down in the description for everything I'm talking about in the video. But before we go into any more detail, first of all let's go over the dimensions, some of which I've measured slightly differently to what's on the actual website. So I've got a diameter of 42mm, thickness of 13.8, lug width of 20, and then the all important lug to lug is coming at 48.8. When it comes to the weight on this mesh strap, that's coming in at 119 grams, and obviously if you go for the nylon strap, that will be less, as you'd expect. But now let's talk about this strap in a bit more detail, because it is quite a nice one. We'll start with the clasp as well, because it is a very good one. So it's got the Omega Star clasp, it's unbranded, so we've got the double pushers there. If we just open it up, you can see we've got the milled clasp, nicely done. And then if you just lift up this little bit on the side here, the little latch, then you can easily adjust it. And then just pop it back in again. No issues at all, really easy to use, works well. But as you can see, it does add quite a bit to the thickness, but I personally don't mind that because I think it balances out the head of the watch, which is fairly thick, despite being fairly light with it being titanium, but overall I think it works. When it comes to the mesh strap itself, it's a nicely finished one. Nothing too fancy, but it's a good quality one. Now moving on to the head of the watch though, we'll talk about that. And as I said, this is titanium, so the whole of the case is titanium, as is that bezel and the crown as well. And according to the listing, it's actually coated as well, so it's got a hardening coating so it won't scratch. And you can see I've got no scratches on mine at all yet, and I have been testing this out for quite a while now. I think it's a couple of weeks at this point. It's always good to see titanium watches having that coating, because they can scratch quite easily otherwise. Then we've got that helium escape valve, which is actually a functioning one apparently, according to the listing, and that one is unsigned. You can also see the nice detailing on that bezel as well. As you'd expect with this kind of style of watch, it's not got a coin edge or anything, but it's still quite nice to use, which I'll show you a little bit later on. So now let's move on to the dial and talk about that in a bit more detail. So I think it is a really nice clean looking dial. Obviously it's not an original design, but they've done it well. So we've got applied indices with that nice black surround matching the black on the hands. Obviously if you go for the black dial version that will be different. Then we've got the printed Watchdives logo at the top, and then down at the bottom just above that date window we've got automatic, and then 100 meters, 330 feet water resistance. So according to the listing on the website though, they've tested it for 100 meters, but they're actually claiming it's 200 meter water resistance, which is interesting. It's not something I've seen before. It's a little bit odd the way they've done that. And as I said, we've got that date window down at the 6 o'clock, definitely my preferred position. And then we've also got that truncated index down there as well. I do always like to see that. It's nice having that and not just a blank space. When it comes to the hands, we've got nice proportions on all of them, and then we've got that red tip on the second hand matching the red for the water resistance rating as well. Just tying it together and adding that little splash of colour. Then we've got that printed minute tracker around the outside, and then that really nice wave pattern on the dial, which is actually engraved into it I think, or pressed or something, but it's got a bit of depth to it either way. Again, if you're interested in the black dial version, just make sure you check out our review specifically for that one, because there are quite a few little subtle differences between the two. Another one of which we will be talking about a little bit later on. But before we do that, first of all let's check whether we've got sapphire crystal or not on this, using the trusty diamond selector 2. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so good to see. And you might have noticed already as well, we've actually got some AR on that crystal, so legibility is really good. And it appears to be clear AR as well. So now let's talk about the movement. And as you probably guessed, yep, it's an NH35. So if we unscrew the crown, pop it out to the first position, you can change the date, pop it out to the second position, second hand stops, you got hacking, and then we can just change the time, and then pop it back in, second hand will re-engage, all works well. Then you got hand winding. As you'd expect, NH35, rock solid movement, no issues there at all. When it comes to the helium escape valve on the other side, they say it's a genuine one. It does actually work, but given the water resistance of the watch, I don't really know why they've got it. I think it's more just for the look, because as I say, the water resistance is tested as 100 meters, but claimed as 200. So do you really need that? Not being a diver myself, I can't really comment on that. If there are any divers watching, I'd be interested to know. Let me know down in the comments. Now let's get onto the bezel. So as I said earlier, we've not got a coin edge or anything on this, given the style of watch. So you might expect it's going to be slipping, but it doesn't. It's easy to use. And when it comes to the insert on this one, this is ceramic, but again, if you go for the black dial version, that's actually aluminium. So it's 120 click. Might sound a little bit different with it being titanium. There's a tiny bit of play on it, but not really much. If you go right round again, you'll be able to hear it's a little bit different sounding to a stainless steel one, but it still works well. And when it comes to the alignment, that's spot on as well. As you zoom in, give you a closer look, again, bang on. So if you've never had a titanium watch before, or titanium bezel specifically, it might be a little bit odd for you at first, but this is pretty much the standard, I think. I've had a couple of titanium watches now, and they're all pretty similar, from micro brands and AliExpress ones. But you're probably wondering now, what's the loom like on this? Is it any good? Let's find out. So we've got a little bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So as you can see, initially at least, it's looking really impressive. So we've got BGW9 on this, which is why we've got the ice blue colour. But again, this is a difference between this white dial version and the black one. If you get the black one, that's got C3, as well as also having that photina, so that will affect the loom a bit. So again, as I said earlier, check out our review for that one if that's what you're after. So as I say with this one, everything's looking really good, initially at least. No patchiness at all. It's all looking pretty consistent as well across the hands, indices and the bezel. We've even got a loom on that second hand too, and that little truncated index down at the 6 that I was on about earlier. The only thing we're really missing is if we had a loom date wheel, which would have been really nice, but not really something you see that often. So I'm expecting some bits to fade quicker than others. The bits where there isn't as much surface area for loom, so those little stem parts on the hands, that truncated index down at the 6, and probably that second hand as well. When it comes to the bezel, I think some of that might fade before the rest as well, apart from possibly that loom pip. But now let's speed it up and find out. So to begin with, we're not going to see much of a change, I don't think. But the longer we keep going, you might see a little bit of a difference between certain parts. So you're beginning to see now the stem bits, as I said, on the hands, they're beginning to fade a little bit quicker than the rest. Same goes for the bezel, apart from that loom pip, as I suspected. Still looking quite good on that second hand. Truncated index again, it's fading a little bit again because of the lack of surface area. But it's all still visible, so it's still looking pretty good. The bits that you're using most, those ends of the hands and the loom pip and obviously the indices, they're all still visible, so pretty decent loom. So hopefully you can see now why I said at the start of this video this is possibly Watchdives' best watch to date, or at least that I've checked out anyway. It's not perfect though, there are a few little things that I would change. But before we talk about that and show you what it's like on wrist, I'll quickly talk about the price. So obviously AliExpress prices, they can vary quite a lot, but on their website, I'm going to go off their price in there. So on the mesh strap, this is coming in at $179, £140, €166. And I think for a grade 2 titanium coated watch, the nice mesh strap with the Omega style clasp, the titanium and ceramic bezel, 120 click, that pretty good loom as well. I think overall it's a really nice package, and it's just really nicely finished as well. It does have a couple of little quirks and maybe things that I would change, as I say. So we'll talk about them now, and also show you what it's like on wrist, before you make up your mind whether you want to pick one up or not. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. So I think it looks really good myself. I do really like titanium. I like that duller finish that you get, kind of almost like gunmetal type finish, as opposed to the stainless steel, which is a bit brighter. I think it suits this watch really well. And when it comes to that clasp, with it being the Omega style one, I think it suits the watch perfectly too. But that being said, it does add that extra little bit of thickness that I talked about earlier on. But again, I think it balances out with the head of the watch. Perhaps some people might say it would have been nice to have the branding on there, but I personally don't mind it being sterile, because then you can use this on other watches as well if you want to do that. But let me know, what do you think on that? Would you prefer the branding, or do you prefer it being sterile for the same reason I do? So when it comes to those little minor issues I talked about, as I say, there's not that many. When it comes to the loom, I would have liked to have seen it be a bit more consistent across all the different parts, but it's a little bit difficult to do given the surface area they're working with certain bits, so I can understand why it's not. And as I said, the bits that you need to be able to actually tell time and use the bezel, they're all still fine, so there's no issues there really. So that's a fairly minor thing. Another minor thing that might bother some people that I talked about before is that bezel action. Because it is titanium bezel, it does have a bit of a slightly more notchy feel to it than a stainless steel one, which some people might not like. But as I said, I'm pretty much used to it now because I've got quite a few watches with titanium bezels, so it's something you grow accustomed to the more you try them out. It seems to be the norm. So if you are still interested in picking one up, links are down in the description as always. That is an affiliate link, it does help support the channel, but you don't pay any extra. But that's it for this one, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.